Often in a negotiation, whether it's in bargaining or in a dispute situation, you'll get two positions. So someone will say, I want this, or this is my right, and someone else will say, I want that, or I don't want what you want. And so the conversation or the dialogue or the debate will move between those two poles. In interest-based bargaining, you don't begin from two poles. You begin from what the shared and competing interests are, and then you generate a range of options or different ways in which those needs can be met. And then you choose the best possible way that those needs can be met that actually includes the needs of both parties. And in doing so, you create new ideas. And so people get quite surprised that something's come up as an idea that actually does meet the needs of both parties, but neither party had come to the table thinking that that would be the outcome.
What we're trying to achieve in the enterprise agreement is a framework for relations with employees and their representatives that provide for fair and enriching work that meets the university's needs, that gets the job done for the university, the teaching and research and other activities of our university, in ways that are consistent with providing fulfilling, enriching, sustained employment for our colleagues.
It hasn't been a conflict-free process, but it's been one which has, I think, pushed both sides to use imagination to look and listen to a range of perspectives, to look at issues and concerns in new and novel ways.
With interest-based bargaining, I think we've been much more creative and we've come up with options that I wouldn't have thought about going into it. And that's really a testament, I think, to that collaborative process.
The NTEU and the university, through this process, have identified that we have a number of common concerns. Things like casualisation, wanting to do something about casualisation.
The Fair Work Commission has developed a model that has 5 phases. The first is preparation, and in that phase, parties come together and share information about what the context is within which they're bargaining and get satisfied with their common understanding of the situation that they face, and they also consult deeply with their constituency about their needs and concerns. The second phase is agreeing on how to bargain, which is all the logistics that go around bargaining that if you don't get right can be quite disruptive later on if there's a mistake. The third is open and explore, and that's really done issue by issue, where you share the interests around a topic and you explore a range of options. The fourth phase is focus and agree, where issue by issue we bring the parties to an agreement about either one or a package of the options that they've generated in Open and Explore. And finally, implementation. And implementation, whilst not specifically a phase of bargaining itself, is terribly important because that's where the parties commit to a certain plan and resource that plan to make sure the agreement is actually implemented. The negotiation between Macquarie University and the National Tertiary Education Union has been boilerplate as far as the process is concerned. I also think that this process will impact the way they relate to one another in other areas of their work together. So in dealing with disputes in the workplace, in dealing with change, in dealing with policy development. So they've not confined their discussion to items that will become words in the enterprise agreement. They've talked about how they're going to work together outside of the actual bargaining process itself.
As a mechanism, and certainly in our process, what it's enabled us to do is see common ground, to see actually that as employers we have as great an interest in high morale, engaged, happy, productive workers as the union have. And it's really helped us understand each other's interests and find ways to think creatively about how we go about that.
I think the key difference has been, rather than each side locking themselves into an intractable position from which they feel they can't move, there has been a greater focus on trying to look at that interest and how you might progress issues in a productive fashion.
I think there is still that stereotype that to get a good outcome in negotiation, it has to be an adversarial or aggressive process. And so managing our stakeholder groups and sharing with them why that's not always the case. And in fact, through collaboration and through talking through interests, you can actually get better outcomes for both parties.
And that's not to suggest everything we're going to agree on, because that's not the case. We're approaching it in different ways, but hopefully in a way that's going to give us all an outcome that we're going to live with and make sure it's implemented in the workplace.
So the benefit of using the 5-phase model and of, in particular, using interest-based bargaining is threefold. When you look at an outcome of a negotiation, it's often said there are 3 outcomes. There's the substantive agreement itself, what's in the agreement. There's the social contract or the relationship, the underlying assumptions and norms that prevail between parties that underpin their future relationship, and there's the transaction cost of the conduct of bargaining itself. Using interest-based bargaining can achieve a substantive outcome that better meets the needs of all parties, that it can enhance the social contract because the information sharing, the openness, the honesty stays with the parties, as they go forward in their future relationship, and the transaction costs can be less because you're not having recourse to the traditional means of forcing outcomes such as industrial action by employees or employer response actions such as lockouts, which are very disruptive.
I think there is a good chance that this process will lead to a better enterprise bargaining outcome because of the way the process has been undertaken, facilitated, the role and participation of all parties in good faith around the issues that have been raised, even when they've been difficult issues, both for the union side and for the management side. We recognise that they've been prepared to engage a lot more on some of the traditional union issues.
It's an approach that is well worth considering, but that has to be dependent on the challenges that your organisation faces and how you think you might best meet the needs of your members or the people that you represent.
What the process has encouraged is a recognition of the similarity of those interests, which provides a pathway then to have a dialogue, a rather open dialogue about how those interests might be furthered. That, I think, is really exciting.
I think that Macquarie University and the NTEU will have a vastly enhanced capacity to resolve issues in the workplace, to advance their mutual interests in the workplace, to manage change, to deal with external shocks that occur to the sector, and to work together at a sector level as well, because they have had this experience.